I'm not going to interact too much in case it's just going to delay the flow. So would you please give us your thoughts on the world of cyber morality, privacy, all of that good stuff? Give us the whole shooting match about what goes through your brain, because look, just to preface this, obviously my presentation talked about cyber morality, and I always have thought to myself jokingly saying, well, if Facebook had a cyber morality officer, they wouldn't have the problems they have today in the world. Right? And now that Facebook is hiring ex-politicians for their leading roles and their face men and so on like this, we can see how deep it is in society. But look, I'm going to stand back, let you talk for maybe 20 minutes or so, and then I'd like to just maybe then interject and talk about you personally, your future over the next couple of years, where you see things happening, because I'm interested about the midterm elections. I'm interested about your own asylum. I'm interested, is there anything we can do in Ireland for you? Because you have a lot of love and a lot of people here respect you. And if there's something we can do, we will try. I can get you one on the dark web.
Hey.
So Ed, look, I'll hand over to you and please share your thoughts.
Yeah, let's just summarize, because I know you guys have been through a lot. And thanks for bearing with us. Somebody clearly did not want us having this conversation. 5 years ago, 3 journalists and I, we're in a Hong Kong hotel room, and we were waiting, sweat pouring down our faces, to see how you were going to react to the first revelation of mass surveillance. That the National Security Agency had been making calls, records of nearly every call in the United States, and they were aided and abetted by this Five Eyes network, right? The US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. It had been an open conspiracy amongst members of government, and they kept this from the public. We were not given a vote. We were not asked if it was okay. And then suddenly, the world knew. In the days that followed, journalists and others published all these documents. You know what happened. We realized the biggest companies on the internet had been collaborating with governments against the public. And in many cases, they went beyond what they were legally required to do to create a sort of power maximum. Now, I'm an American. I love my country, right? But many of you, when you hear the word American exceptionalism, you probably get a bad taste in your mouth. And I want you to think about what we've seen. You've heard about the murder of journalists by the Saudis. There's nobody in the UK, I think, who hasn't heard about the Russians going around poisoning doorknobs or whatever. Norms are shifting. And I think it's important to consider why that's happening. Assassination is not new. It does not surprise me. This has happened as long as we've had spies, as long as we've had intelligence, honestly, as long as we've had men with sticks. But in the wake of 9/11, the US created a new policy. We engaged in drone warfare. We tried to make our enemies disappear in a safe and politically clean way, without the involvement of courts and other things that got similarly messy. The president simply said, this man has to go. Military officers saluted, missile was fired, enemy was gone. This is American exceptionalism. It is the idea that we can do things we would not permit our competitors, our rivals, our adversaries, even our allies to do. And we tried to create a new kind of surveillance, mass surveillance. We tried to create a new kind of killing, targeted killing, as a sort of a politically correct rebranding of assassination. And the idea was not to create some reign of terror, at least if you believe the government. It was to make the world safer. But there are a lot of countries in the world, and they don't all agree that we should let this one country do whatever they want. So we had set out to create a new exception for ourselves. What it actually resulted in is the world of today. We created a new norm where violence, as long as you can deny it, is acceptable. Where surveillance without limit is permissible so long as you say it's for the right reason and no one can prove you abused it. This is a world where the legality of a thing is all that matters, not the morality of it. You mentioned Facebook and all that. We see it all the time. We don't have protections. We have protections against our governments in many cases that we don't have the benefit of when Google is doing the same thing. How can that be? And how should we fix it? I think what's happened is we've created this world where the meaning of law has become thin. It has been called into question. And a lot of people are, raising their black flags and saying, let's create a new world order. But what's important? We don't need to get rid of law, right? We want to reform it. We want it to work. But what happens when it's not? What happens when we can't reform it quickly? What happens when it's not responsive to us? We don't control it. And our politics are starting to look a lot more like Poland or Hungary or Donald Trump's America than they are what you would consider to be Ireland, right? And I think this is where the moral responsibility of everyone in the room comes into play. Life is a team sport. And the defense of our rights, when people say, nothing to fear, nothing to hide, that too is a team sport. A lot of people go along with it and say, well, it's true. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I pay my taxes. I don't buy anything on the dark net. Who cares? But it's not about just protecting yourself. It's about protecting your society. It's about protecting your community. It's about protecting your neighbor. And when you give up a right because it's not useful to you, you're destroying that right for the people who need it, for the people who are vulnerable, for the people who are different, for the people who stand out a little bit. And this, of course, applies in networks as well. When you don't patch, you're harming the herd. How do we apply patch management for democracy? This is the question that we're facing today. And I think the problem is everyone's afraid to try for an answer. We're not going to get it right on the first try. We're not going to get it right on the fifth try. But right now, we're not trying at all. And that's a problem. We need to recognize we're not just technologists. We're not just network defenders, right? We're citizens. And we're not just citizens of our nation. We're citizens of a world, right, that we all share that has finite resources. The only thing that we seem to have an unlimited amount of are conflicts, right? And somebody has to start going, we can pass the best laws of the world in Ireland. That's not going to help people in Russia. That's not going to help people in China. But maybe it should. And the way we do that is by going to more universal law. Go below the mandate that are pink on a page that can't jump off the page and protect you. Right? We protect the law. The law doesn't protect us. The law doesn't mean anything without us. But with technology, with science, with encryption, right? By making your networks not focus on tracking and data collection and analysis, sort of monetizing people's daily activities, we can get back to what the internet was originally intended to be, which is this new domain of the mind, a place where we are free, a place where we are able to share, a place where we are able to connect without prejudgment, because I know people in the room are old enough, they remember what it was like in the 90s when nobody used their real name. Nobody put their picture next to their news group or their forum posts. Everybody had a name that they picked themselves, a name that didn't exist offline. And it is this transactional identity that we have lost. And the funny thing is, it is this transactional identity that kept the internet safe. It was when we were not being monitored by our IP addresses, when we were not being monitored by our unique advertising identifiers in our cell phones or on our SIM cards or in our handsets, that we were able to create this momentum, this creative explosion that created an enormous ocean of terrible websites, but within them a few great ideas that allowed us to create, to communicate, to connect, to understand each other. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we really stand to lose if we do nothing. It's not about law, it's not about security, it's not about surveillance, it's not about terrorists. It's about democracy. It's about an open and free society where you can be yourself, where you can make mistakes and not have them haunt you for the rest of your life. We are losing not just the right to privacy, we are losing the right to be ourselves. We are being influenced by these outside groups through targeted advertising. We are being influenced by these outside groups through hacking and lies, the delegitimization of real news and the elevation of fake news. And I want you to think about everything that we've inherited, this distance between the conspiracy theories of pre-2013 and the facts of today. And understand that the distance between conspiracy theory and fact in many moments is one voice. And that voice might be yours. More likely than not, you are the person who has the idea that none of the people on stage do. But that idea will not become true if you sit back and wait for it to happen. If you expect these, big rich companies are going to do it. This was the problem that I had when I was at the NSA so many years ago. I had gotten to the point where I realized it was wrong. I had discovered the evidence. I knew I could do something about it, but I knew what the costs would be. I knew it would be hard. I knew it could possibly be dangerous. I knew it would require taking an enormous chance. And so I waited. I waited for somebody else to do it, because I didn't want to take the hit. And as I waited, these programs spread. They became more capable, they became more entrenched, and more countries began doing the same thing. And I want you to think about all of the bad things that you see happening in the world right now, and understand you're not on the hook for saving the world, right? None of us can, I can't, you can't. That's not how it works. But we can move the world one step closer to being saved, each individually, one decision at a time. People talk about heroes and villains and traitors, and I've been called every bad name in the book. I've been called all the nice ones. Don't believe either. I'm an ordinary person, just like you. The only difference between us is the decisions we've made. And I want you to understand that you are never farther than one decision away from changing everything in your life, in your community, and possibly in the world. And we can't wait for Facebook to get a chief morality officer. Because God, we know that's not going to happen. But maybe the chief morality officer, in every circumstance, in every time, in every moment, is all of us. People say we have nothing to hide and nothing to fear, right? It's not about protecting privacy. It's not about having something to hide. It's about protecting society. It's about protecting all. Privacy is what allows you to determine who you are and who you want to become. And to stand by while this is under attack, set aside politics entirely, right? And it happens in your networks, right? And you know it's hard. You know it's hard to keep attackers off your network. But if you cut costs, right? If you cut corners and go, it doesn't matter, it's fine, there's nothing here that's that serious, you're missing the bigger picture. Which just doesn't even matter if they pull your mail spools, if they get your database. It's about all of it in aggregate, for all of our sites, all of our places, all of our business, all of our connections, all of our phones, all of our computers under our desks, like right now, our laptops and our bags. We are the herd. And if we don't protect it, no one else is going to.
Okay, and thanks, Ed. So I'm going to get brave now and ask you a question. Hopefully the link will stand up for this. In Trump's America, and we live on a flat world of the internet, and we're all interconnected. Does reality exist anymore? And what is the truth? And how can we all day to day, or even within our job roles, if we have influence, protect the world? Because what I find is more and more there's a gap or a delta between the people who are busy with their lives and the people who are on the sidelines screaming, "Do you know what's happening? Do you know what's happening?" They're taking all our data, they're making automated decisions, they're surveilling people, they're murdering people, all of these things. I mean, some of the statistics that I've read recently, whether they're true or false, because what is the truth and what is reality, is there's now 4,000 identified people in the NSA that are suspected of being whistleblowers, that are being heavily surveilled at this moment. There's 1 million people with security clearance, so the numbers are just getting bigger all the time. How do we identify the Trump-esque bull from what's real in the world? And how can people establish trust online to understand what those sources are? I particularly use sources like, for example, credible sources like Guardian newspaper, things like that, that I will say, well, look, there's a good chance these things are fairly robust. Do you have any advice for people on how they can navigate this world?
I mean, part of it is back to basics, because the problem is sometimes the news, even the best news, even the most credible news, they get a story wrong. We saw this recently with Bloomberg, right? They've got this supply chain story about Supermicro in China, where they say the Chinese are creating, these next level implants in PCBs, and they're sending them out. They got into Apple's data center, they got into Amazon's data center. It's all over the place. You get Amazon that denies it up, down, sideways. You get Apple denies it up, down, sideways. They're both calling for retractions now. The former top cyber guy for the NSA, I think his name is Rob Joyce, is out there also saying we have no idea what's going on. The Department of Homeland Security is saying we have no idea what's going on. And the reality is Bloomberg got something wrong, right? Supply chain attacks are real. We know they happen. The U.S. does them ourselves, right? We've got pictures of NSA employees opening the Cisco box so they can manipulate it, right? In that case, they're likely just loading bad firmware. But hardware implants are possible. What is true is what you can prove. What is true is what you can test. And given the threats faced by whistleblowers, journalist sources, right, and journalists themselves, they've become far too inclined to use anonymous sources. They have been far too inclined to engage in the he said, she said, we saw something, we believed something, we heard something. And these things are important. They have a role in the press, right? But we can't let our understanding of what's true be subordinated to simple rumors, because that's what we see happening on the other side. They say, I heard, I think this is happening, but they never show anything. They never prove anything. They never establish anything. This is the same thing that I faced when I came forward. The government was saying, oh my goodness, people are going to die, terrorists are going to get through, they're reading this with delight. And the journalists who went along with this report, they have blood on their hands. Well, it's 5 years later, and they've never shown that that actually occurred. We've had a number of terrorist attacks since then where we see their operational security hasn't improved at all. They're still using unencrypted drug dealer phones like in the 1990s. We see every government agency that's doing post-mortem on these guys saying, we already knew about them. They were in the system. The problem was actually that we were watching too many people. Our focus was spread too widely. And because of that, we missed the real threats. We missed the things that matter. But I want you to think back to that blood on your hands, sort of screaming without showing it, without proving anything. What is that doing? That is trying to change the conversation from the concrete of these policies and programs, the things that have violated your rights, the things that have narrowed the freedoms that we enjoy across the world, and changing the topic instead to the theoreticalness of journalism in a free society. I said before, newspapers can get things wrong. They have gotten things wrong. They will get them wrong again. But when they show things, when they show their evidence, when they establish their proof, when they name their sources, when they do the best kind of things that we've seen in the past and we will see again, if you can test it, you can prove it. If you can prove it, you can trust it. But the bottom line is the politics of our time are aimed at destroying trust. They're trying to leave us unsure of what's real, what's not. And when this happens, sometimes the best move is back to basics. What is proven? What is shown? Where's the evidence? When we have the evidence, we can make a decision.
Okay, and for you, Ed, right, obviously over the last few years, I've seen different interviews with you, and people tend to ask you things like, do you have regrets, all that stuff, and I still feel your energy that you're on a moral crusade. Maybe crusade's the wrong word, but you're very much, your moral compass is pushing and trying to help the world understand these things, and as you say, it's gone beyond privacy. What's the future look like for you? And I know it's hard for you to answer that question in detail, but my understanding is your asylum is going to expire in the next couple of years, which almost synchronizes with the elections in the States, unfortunately, because I think that's really, really shit timing, to be honest, right? To put it straight. We have the midterms coming up in the States, and hopefully America will wake up and do something to help that. Do you think that the world, the awareness you've created, do you think that can be reinvigorated with politicians or whatever, where the forces come from people to realize that you, whether it's a plea deal, whether it's a pardon, where's your future so you don't become a pawn, or do you have any real insights on what that might look like, or is it a day-by-day process, Ed?
If I would be safe, I never would have left Hawaii. I can't control what happens to me. And so I don't focus on it. I'm going to work as long as I can, as hard as I can, and that's what I'll be judged on. When people look at my life, they can make their own decisions as to were the costs greater or less than the benefits. And I'm pretty confident that I at least can be satisfied knowing actually what did happen because I lived it. But what happens to me? You know, do I get pushed in front of a bus? Do I fall off a building? Do I get, marched into a plane in handcuffs? That doesn't matter really for anybody but me. And whistleblowers coming behind me because of the example that it sets. What actually matters is what we do. What actually matters is what you leave thinking out of this hall tonight. Yes, I've had to pay a price. There are consequences to speaking out. But I did it gladly. I did it with open eyes. I knew what I was getting into. And honestly, I didn't expect to be able to speak with you tonight in Ireland. I expected to be sitting in an orange jumpsuit on a prison ship in the Indian Ocean. So all things considered, I'm actually really satisfied. But this is the thing that we need to remember. The fleeting satisfaction, the satisfaction of the moment, the contentment of the time, that's okay. But in terms of progress, I'm never going to be satisfied. I've had one condition for going to the United States and facing any trial they want to throw at me, and that's that they give me the chance to argue to the jury what it is that I did, why I did it, and for them to decide if that was right or wrong. That's the basis of any fair trial. Under the laws of the United States as they are today, that's not permitted. You can't tell the jury why you did what you did. Your motive doesn't matter. The law does not distinguish between people who gave information to journalists for the public good and people who sell secrets to spies for their own private benefit. And I think that's a tragic thing, and I think that harms not just the United States and its reputation. I think that harms its allies, and I think that harms the press broadly, because we have been in the past a champion of the right to speak, the right to publish, and I hope that we will again. But the only way that's going to happen is if people take risks. So yeah, in terms of what's going to happen to me, this may sound pat, but I don't care.
Okay, Ed, I really appreciate your time here today. Before I go, I think people like yourself, Chelsea Manning, our credit to humanity for what you've done. Genuinely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon in Ireland.
Ed, hopefully next time, this day next year, I'll shake your hand, either in Moscow or here, but you'll be alive and well, and we get to meet face to face, and we won't deal with these technical issues. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you again.